Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Oh, storming out there, everybody. Storms are brewing. Storm ducks are brewing. You know what is odd? You know, the greatness of that is storm duck is that it does feel like every time the storm passes, the ducks are there to play in the puddle. I don't know if that's an analogy for anything. I just, it was just noticeable driving home today around the puddles. Oof. I mean, the weather's getting crazy out there. But you guys didn't come here for weather. We came here for Goosies and Dolphins talk as season's closing in, man. You had a full slate of college football tonight. You got Canes opening up their season this weekend, and you got the Dolphins opening up their year in just a week's time against the dastardly Jacksonville Jaguars. Enders of Dan Marino's career, 62-7. And Mike McDaniel, I do feel like, I don't know what it is, and it's kind of tough to tell on Twitter sometimes, but, I go Twitter, I check Finn's Reddit. Those are probably two of my most prominent. I feel like IG is mostly like mic'd up in Goosies, so I don't think you get a read of panic on that at all. But I do feel a lot of angst getting into the season. I feel like people are nervous. I think it's that nervous energy. You've had this long preseason, which wasn't very enjoyable. I think that this was a preseason that had boring games, stupid storylines, a lot of injuries, which didn't really make a lot of sense because it didn't feel like anybody practiced. And now everybody's really annoyed with the Miami Dolphins, and especially Mike McDaniel and the GM Chris Greer, because they're really trying to sell you on the offensive line being A-okay. And I go at this, and I will say, it's not like I came into this year thinking the offensive line is my number one concern. I actually came in this year, I'm like, I think they'll be okay, because they were okay last year. It got a little derailed when Connor Williams got hurt, and it wasn't quite the same. But I think it's fair concern from the fan base. I really do. And I think the almost false bravado that Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer are putting up there, I don't think that the fan base finds that funny and to be a laughing matter. And I understand why. Because the Dolphins are tremendously fun. I'm guilty. I've said that they're like a drug. Having the Dolphins have this many explosive plays it's hella enjoyable, right? Like, it's really, really fun. Offense you haven't seen in the likes of years. Some of you kids who didn't even watch Marino, you're like, what is this sorcery? Which is totally understandable. But it does feel a little flimsy. It does feel like one thing can set it all off. It does feel like if it doesn't all run perfectly, if it has to be improvised at all a little bit, it goes a little bit sideways. And so I understand everybody's concern. I think they're fair concerns. And, you go through this training camp and, for example, they had a practice with the Bucs, right? And some people were talking about Graham Barton coming into this. Like, why don't you go get him? He's now their starting center. And I'm not saying Patrick Paul's not going to be awesome. The guy turned people into memes in preseason, but he's at a position that is set. It's not going to probably be set for many years to come, and so I get it. You got to restock the farm system a little bit, but one has to wonder going into a year like this, could they have looked after losing a guard to $100 million crazy deal? Would it have been more prudent to go and get you somebody who you could have plugged in this year rather than this monstrosity who maybe even is ahead of the curve as far as a project is concerned? I'm not even going to say that he is a project, but his spot is blocked. And so it's just confusing to everybody. And you're sitting here and you're trying to say that everybody is a bunch of bleep holes because you don't believe in Liam Eichenberg, even though even Liam Eichenberg has talked about some frustration this year because he's like, I don't want to be stuck in one position. I'd like to, get my fair shake at staying in one spot. And look, that's a fair reason for Eichenberg to say, hey, why haven't I settled in? Well, you guys have been playing musical chairs with me all over the offensive line my entire career. It's a fair point. He had to be called into action because Aaron Brewer, who you bring in, his damn hand breaks, or we think it breaks. I don't know exactly what the injury is because they won't tell us. They won't even. Mike McDaniel today was like, I'm not going to tell you if he's snapping or not. I don't have to give an injury report. And I just feel like a lot of that, like it all antagonizes the fan base. It just gets everybody a little bit on edge because he says this week, he's like, more confident than I've ever been in the offensive line. And he pulled this exact same move last year where he goes, well, I've never had so many NFL caliber offensive linemen in my offensive line room. And cool, except you've never had more faith in your offensive line, except Jack Driscoll, who like you put on the roster for 12 hours and then you said, forget it. We all saw the Vita Vea play. Let's go get a receiver we've never heard of from Green Bay. And maybe the guy's going to be awesome. I don't know. But I mean, Dairyland Express did say he was one of the top 5 players that the Packers were going to regret letting go. But I just think everybody's a little on edge about stuff. And because I'll give you another thing that I think the fan base doesn't want to be, is a little annoyed that they've been left in the dark with, and that's this Odell Beckham thing. It's like, and that to me is honestly right now a bigger concern than the offensive line. And it's not even so much, it's not just about the player, it's about the depth. Because the Dolphins are bringing in Robbie Chosen and Eric Ezukanma's on the practice squad, and he hasn't even produced on a regular season. So what do you know you're going to get from him? River Craycraft's banged up, and you got 2 incredible receivers, incredible, but there's not a lot of diversity. Like you're not exactly going to the wide receiver buffet here. It's the same height all over the place, and you're wondering, all right, do they have enough to make this thing productive? And then what the hell happened with the Odell Beckham thing that we're all missing? Because he, is out here on Twitter berating, maybe that's a strong word, but is clapping back at fans who are antagonizing him and adding him. And I get that that's annoying. But then also, 2 days ago, Mike McDaniel's like, we're not ready to say if he's going on PUP yet. TBD. PUP, TBD. And then next day, of course, he's on PUP because he's not practicing. And Tua's the only guy out here who's honest is Tua, and I'll get to him in a second. Because I think he's like the only one who really could truly give a window to the fans, because you have Mike and you have Chris who are like, got to put the good front up. And, Chris then comes out with this, we decided that it's best for Odell Beckham to start on PUP. And the other thing is that coincided with everybody saying, there was a procedure he had. We all knew this was the case. Well, if you all knew this was the case, then why did Mike McDaniel say 2 days ago TBD? Your answer can simply just be because coaches lied, Tobin. That's a stupid question, which is a fair response from you guys. I just think it's interesting that you cause more mystery and cloudiness with this than there needs to be. And with him in particular, because like with Bradley Chubb, we all accept, hey, he's working his way back from injury. We know. With certain guys, you at least say week to week. But with Odell, there's just been this, I don't know. There's just been this cloud of mystery around him that seems to lean towards he's more hurt than they've let on. And I don't know if that's a Mike McDaniel trying to be careful with a prickly star, which, to be fair, Odell Beckham has not had like the smoothest stops all the time in his career and will get very public when he's unhappy about stuff. So I don't know if that plays into this, but it does just kind of add into this preseason angst. Again, I just think that you need football to get here because it just has felt like I'm trying to think like the last time there's been just good, right? And it has felt like basically since Jalen Phillips came back to practice, it has been nothing but banged up players. We had Tua relive the Brian Flores beef. We had a very, very, very unentertaining backup QB battle that had people opining to bring back Ryan Tannehill. And all the while, you're just sitting. You've had Jalen Waddle out for 3 weeks, Javon Holland out for 3 weeks and still not paid. You've had, just nothing really good, and you just want your damn football season to start because it left such a bad taste in your mouth the way that it ended at the end of last year. And I just don't think the fans really want the wool pulled over their eyes right now because, Mike McDaniel could sit here and he could say, oh, I'm as confident in the offensive line as I've ever been. And that you guys should, he's like telling the reporters, you guys should go ask defensive linemen about Liam Eichenberg and how much he's improved. And I'm like, you sure you want that to be the experiment that you want to roll with? Look, I hope Liam Eichenberg, I hope he's an all-pro guard. I hope at one day he's in the Ring of Honor. Nothing would make Dolphins happier than Liam Eichenberg going into the Ring of Honor one day. Nothing would thrill the Dolphin more than that. But it's just a little bit of skepticism, dude. The roulette with him all over the place. And then you have a center who, Tua and him were having snap issues. He hasn't snapped. His hand's now busted. You have a whole new interior offensive line, basically, with everybody kind of settling in. Guys who have had spots, but it's unproven to get through a full season together. And then you have Tua, who's like, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to get the ball out quick, which isn't it's an honest answer, which you appreciate from Tua, but it's not the most comforting answer in the world. And even today, I was like listening to some podcasts and people were like ripping him about it, be like, oh, how could you say that about your offensive line? What kind of a leader is that? I'm like, probably a guy that had Jesse Davis as his tackle, as his tackle one year and got his ribs broke by Epinesa. Was it Epinesa on the Bills? So, he's been behind some bad offensive lines. I'm not suggesting that's this. I'm not suggesting it's in that class. You got Teron Armstead. He's a bona fide, solidified, great player. Coin flip if he can give you more than a dozen games. But we know when he's out there, he's great. Austin Jackson seems to have found a real comfort in his career. And, yeah, Jones and Eichenberg, they got reps. They got some time together. Aaron Brewer seems like he could be a fit. It theoretically can work. But for anybody in the front office or on the coaching staff to look at the fan base and be like, you guys are getting too crazy about this. Gotta tell you guys, hasn't been the most fantastic last 3 weeks. And, there's a lot riding on this season. A lot of contracts were paid out. You guys pooped the bed at the end of last year. You have a huge start of the season coming up here where you guys seemingly better get off to a good start because the back third of this schedule looks hellacious to get through. So the Dolphins better build themselves a cushion, and it looks like there's a lot of questions. Other than one of the ones that, other than the Jalen Phillips thing, which seems to be as positive as anything, which is great news. Great news. But, the other stuff I think is just, it's just a matter of there's been no football and you want to get to it. And I don't know. I think the family's just like, hey, you're going to have to show us. Like, sorry. That whole thing about, oh, no. You pulled that move last year. And then, Connor Williams goes down and the whole thing falls apart. And Teron Armstead is still made of porcelain. And sorry. I'm sorry if that comes with a little bit of uneasiness for the fan base, guys.